Hello and welcome to Stateline. I'm Kathy Boland. First, to the signs of growing dissatisfaction in country Victoria with the Bracks government. The Cattlemen'S protest in Melbourne 2 weeks ago became something of a lightning rod for unhappy rural voters. Coastal wind farms and a toxic waste dump for the Mallee are just two of the issues which have sparked community anger. But is it a noisy minority or signs of a more substantial problem for the party which gained office on the slogan of governing for all Victorians? Reporter Gavin Fang heard from the people uniting under the banner Country Voice, who are promising to make a stand at the next election.
Four-wheel driving's an experience to get away from the city and enjoy the views and the sights, the sounds, the smells, everything Australia has to offer. Victoria's got more tracks open to the public, more sights to see, greater environment to get involved in, and such a diversity of environmental experiences. It's just amazing.
When Victoria's mountain cattlemen rode on Parliament House 2 weeks ago, Michael Coldham was among the crowd. You may ask what the Melbourne lawyer has in common with the alpine graziers. On the surface, not a lot. But dig a little deeper and you'll find that the four-wheel drive enthusiast and his fellow members of the Victorian Four-Wheel Drive Association are willing allies in an emerging force opposed to the Bracks government.
Our concern is that by creating an Alpine National Park and banning cattlemen, the next thing is four-wheel drivers, trail bikers, horse riders, anybody else that wants to get involved and see and participate and be actively experiencing that area will not be allowed to do so.
When the state government made the decision to ban grazing in the Alpine National Park, it acted against just 45 families in what it said was the defence of the environment for all Victorians. But the power of the cattlemen has not been in their numbers, but in their command of the iconic image that is the man from Snowy River. And the treatment of the cattlemen has brought together an alliance of seemingly disparate groups.
The Cattlemen's issue has acted as a lightning rod for country dissatisfaction that's been building up for some time. It's like lighting a wick for an explosion that was ready to happen because people were already very frustrated.
The government's proposal to build a toxic waste dump at Nowinji in the Mallee, its handling of coastal wind farms and delays in the fast rail project have led to criticism that Labor governs for Melbourne.
It's not something you can fix with money or by having new programs to do with infrastructure or any other such thing. Their lives are being changed by government decisions and they don't like it.
And that's an issue that we should be taking up too.
Bob Richardson is a former trade unionist, now a leading player in a group backing the cattlemen calling itself Country Voice. Its supporters range from the Australian Deer Association and sporting shooters to loggers and beekeepers.
It's really great to have that backing, to know that there's not 50 of us out there with this problem. So it's great that we've got thousands of other people that really want to get behind us. It sort of boosts you up a lot. It's really been really good.
Michael Coldham is a former member of the Liberal Party and Bob Richardson a former communist. But they share a concern that green groups are driving the government to over-regulate rural land.
There is an ideology about closing off certain areas of the high country or the wilderness areas to preserve them for the future, make them into a museum.
This sort of mad over-regulation with green regulations, from farmers having to get a permit to plough rabbit burrow if it's near native vegetation, people in the timber industry under constant uncertainty and of losing their jobs, four-wheel drivers and horse riders losing access to more areas, so they're the sort of common threads.
Well, it's patently nonsense. There are over 20 million visitor days in national parks around Victoria each year. That's probably over 10 million people every year visit our national parks and protected areas and enjoy these special places that government hold on behalf of all Victorians. If people want access to national parks, all they have to do is go to them.
We've been waiting for something like this to happen for so many years.
Country Voice plans to take its fight to the government at the next election. A country charter will be drawn up with candidates who support that charter winning the group's backing.
the strategy is to have a marginal seats campaign to identify those electorates in which we can change the vote sufficiently to unseat a few Labor members to get our message across.
2 decades ago, 30,000 farmers took to the streets of Melbourne in one of the largest ever rural protests. But political analyst Nick Economou says, like then, today's country voice is unlikely to sway city voters.
At the end of the day, the sorts of issues that are being championed by those interests will not resonate amongst metropolitan voters. I think Mr Bracks has got much more to fear from adverse metropolitan voter reaction to, say, his freeway policy than he has to the decision to make the Alpine area a national park, or indeed to locate a toxic waste dump in far parts of the state.
Ironically, Country Voice may present the biggest threat to independence in the Nationals. The history of parties built on rural anger hasn't been kind to the Nationals, but their leader denies they've been left behind.
Well, we're yet to see if they have come to that conclusion. We, at the moment, have a collective of voices who understandably are absolutely very disgruntled with the way in which this government has conducted itself. That's where it's reached at the moment. They've come together under a banner recently of the Country Alliance. But in fact, they are talking about exactly the issues that we are talking about and have continued to talk about.
Environment Minister John Thwaites was in the Wimmera today promoting a deal that will see the construction of the long-awaited Wimmera-Mallee pipeline. Looking at home in the bush, the minister dismissed concerns about a rural backlash against the government.
If you get out there in country Victoria, you hear a clear message, and sometimes people don't like things, they'll tell you that, other times they do. We're always listening, but on balance, we are certainly, I think, getting pretty good support from across country Victoria. You look at what we've announced today, the Wimmera-Mallee pipeline, you look down in Gippsland, the new irrigation work we're doing there, you look right across the state, people in country Victoria, I think, do see that the Bracks government does care.
Criticism that the Bracks government is doing the bidding of Green groups is also brushed aside.
There are lots of different sides of the debate, and you'll always have one group say the other group's got too much power. We take a balanced approach.
The powerful images of the Cattlemen'S rally was a public relations triumph. But will it be enough to sustain a campaign against the government until the next election? Victorians won't go to the polls until late next year. But the members of Country Voice say they've got the stamina to maintain the fight for as long as it takes.
It's a long haul, it's going to be hard, but, you know, Australians are known to pursue something they really want, and what the Bracks government's got to realise that once you start to kick country people in the guts, it'll come back and bite him, is pretty much what we're going to say, you know, and he's done it now and he started something I don't think he's really realised what he's done yet.